All right, everybody, I'm going to go over the content for this week's assignment. So I'm going to share my screen with you and you'll see everything I'm talking about on your screen. So this week's project is going to deal with photography. I thought it would be fun to kind of do a lesson with you guys about that since we all have cameras on our phone and you guys can use your phones to do this assignment. So basically, I'm going to talk about the history of cameras and how they were used and how they work, and then go over your assignment. So basically, a camera is a light tight box with an opening of some kind that lets in a desired amount of light at a particular time to create image on a light sensitive material, which is placed inside. In a digital camera, it would be the digital sensor, whereas in a film camera, it would have been the film. Um, a photograph historically was taken by letting light fall on that film or light sensitive material, and that is what would create the image. There are three parts of a film camera. So you always have the camera body, and I mean digital cameras, you also usually have a camera body. The second is the optical element, that would be your lens. And a lens is a curved piece of glass or something transparent. Sometimes it can be plastic that the light will be passing through. The light rays are bent or refracted through the glass so that they form the image. The type of glass would be considered convex, which means it's a curved piece of glass that's thicker in the middle. And that glass works to bend light rays towards the center. The third part of your camera would be the chemical element, which would be film, or the digital element, which would be the sensor in the camera. So those are your three parts of cameras. So cameras have a hole that I'll talk about in a minute that allows light in. And you can see here in this pinhole camera example, when light is let into the camera's box or body, it creates an image. You may notice that the image of the balloon is reversed. If you've ever seen the movie Wonder, the main character, Augie, creates a camera obscura. A camera obscura is a giant version of a pinhole camera. You can see Augie opening the aperture, which is the hole that lets light into the camera. And when he goes out in front of the camera to move around and dance, the image that appears on the inside of the box is a reversed version of him dancing. In film cameras and digital SLR cameras, there is something called a pentaprism inside of the camera body, penta meaning 5, like a pentagon having 5 sides. The pentaprism is a 5-sided mirror that helps by flipping the image so it appears right side up when you see it on the viewfinder or the screen. Inside of the camera body itself, you have the shutter, which is a device that will actually open and close like a window between the film and the lens. And it will let light in only when you have told the camera to do so. So the shutter speed actually controls the length of time that the light is let in. So the shutter will actually open for a set amount of time. There are different settings that the photographer can choose to decide how quickly the shutter will move, allowing light in to expose the digital or film medium. Shutter speed lengths are all set in fractions. So you might have 1 second, then 1/10 of a second, 1/15 of a second, 1/30th of a second. So if you imagine you took 1 second and you divided it into 15 or 30 or 60 or 90 or 120, that little tiny amount of time, you can't even really count it, is how the shutter opens and closes. If you have the shutter setting very quickly and you were looking at it with your naked eye, you almost can't even see it. It goes so fast because we're dealing with a lot of times fractions of a second. The aperture is the opening on the lens. You can see here in this where I'm motioning with my mouse, you have this piece of the lens called the iris diaphragm, and it's all these little overlapping plates that expand or contract to allow or reduce the amount of light that is let in. So you can see this example, this would be a really small aperture, so that's not very much light. You would want a small aperture if you're outside in the sun or in a really well lit room. You might want a medium aperture if you are in a darker room or maybe just taking inside photos, and you'd want a large, wide open aperture if you were in very low lighting. So camera lenses are sorted or categorized by their focal length. Focal length is the magnification of the lens, and it's measured by the distance between the lens and the film. So a 300 millimeter lens would really mean that the lens is 300 millimeters away from the film. Some lenses have a fixed focal length, so it will only take pictures that look like they're from one distance, whereas other lenses have a range of focal length, usually something that you can zoom in and out to get different distances in the photo. So you have different kind of lenses. In this photo of the Colosseum, you can see it's shot with a wide angle lens, so you can see more, whereas without a wide angle lens, you see less of the background, and even you can't see all of the Colosseum, but this person was standing in the same place. A wide angle lens will use a shorter focal length to give you more of the image around it. You can see this one, you can see that more of the sides, you can see more of the image, but it will slightly shrink the image. There are fisheye lenses, if you've ever seen that. It adds like a round, distorted effect to images. Telephoto lenses are probably the most common. I feel like each year they introduce new iPhones, the telephoto capability on the phone gets better. I think Android does a better job allowing users to use telephoto and zoom in and get clearer photos. In the same way that I was talking about focal length, some of your telephoto lenses will be fixed, meaning it will only show you a view like this one. It won't allow you to zoom out at all. And other ones will have zoom in and zoom out capabilities, where maybe when it's zoomed out, it looks like this, and then when you zoom in, it looks like this. The last lens I'll talk about is a macro lens. They're great for photographing objects when you're really, really close. If you've ever seen like a picture of a bug in a science book where the bug is like super in focus and it looks like it's, the size of your fist, even though it's probably the size of your fingernail, that was most likely taken with a macro lens. Digital cameras, in comparison to film, they will offer both optical and digital zoom. So there's two different kinds of zoom you can get. Optical zoom will work like a telephoto lens, whereas no matter how far you zoom, the quality of your picture will be the same. Digital zoom, however, will basically crop and stretch the image, so you're going to lose quality if it's only digital zoom. Think about if you pick an image off of Google and it's really tiny and you put it in a Word doc or a Google doc and then you stretch it and it's all pixelated. That's what happens when you use digital zoom, and that's why I think a lot of phone zoom is not as great, because it often uses digital versus optical. Optical zoom has no effect on your image quality, whereas digital zoom will result in a loss of image quality. If I pull this up, both of these things kind of work the same way, whether it's film or digital. Film creates your image when light exposes what you're looking at to the film itself. If you overexpose film to light, it will create something that's too bright. If you don't expose it to enough light, it will create something that's very dull. In order to develop your film, you have to mix it with chemicals called developer and fixer. Developer helps the film process so that the images will show up, and fixer will set the images so that when you turn the light on, they don't disappear, because the film will no longer be light sensitive. So the fixer makes it safe to hold up a photo negative or a picture in light. Color film is a little bit different than black and white film. It will have different layers that have chemicals which react to blue, green, and red, and you combine them together to get your image. Digital cameras, instead of using film, they will use a digital sensor to capture the image and record it onto a memory card of some kind, or onto the device if it's a phone. And a digital camera photo is made up of pixels, and they're the smallest unit of a digital image. They're like little tiny squares. And generally, each pixel in an image will create 3 bytes of data. So pixels in general are very small, but if you have a very high quality camera, it will make a larger file size because you'll have a lot of pixels. When we used to shoot with film, you had something called the film speed. It is referred to as sensitivity when you are using a digital camera. It basically is describing the speed of the development or the exposure, and the word that they use, rather than saying speed, it is called ISO. So on a digital camera that has a lot of settings, you might see a setting called ISO, And the ISO is what maybe you would have thought as the film speed. If you talk to your parents when they used to buy film for a film camera, you often bought like 100 or 400 film. Those were like the two most common. 100 would be what you want for an outside, a sunny day, if you're going to like a zoo. Whereas 400 is what you might want if you're photographing like an indoor birthday party or something where the lighting isn't as bright. Um, on a digital camera, often your ISO will go up to like 1600. Sometimes I think mine goes up to like 4600, and it will help you in really dim environments. However, the higher you make your ISO, it will add noise if it's digital or grain if it's film, which you can see this photo of this girl with the hat. It has all these little dots. That's called grain. It's almost like a texture. In film, the reason that it happened is because film has silver particles within it, and when it would get developed, the film grain would be a product of those silver particles. Digital noise is what it's called in digital photography, and that is visual distortion due to there not being enough data or information that is captured onto that sensor because there might not have been enough light or enough time for exposure. So you can see it won't be as clear of a picture as maybe if this person would have maybe used flash or had a spotlight or had chosen a different ISO setting. If you look at an SLR camera or a point and shoot camera, if you ever hear those two terms, an SLR is a single lens reflex camera. A lot of times you might hear DSLR, meaning digital single lens reflex. An SLR camera has a semi-automatic mirror that produces the same image that the photo or the photographer is seeing in the viewfinder. The DSLR cameras are going to be bigger than a point and shoot camera. Really, most SLRs will be bigger. An SLR camera will also have an interchangeable lens, something that pops on and pops off that you can change. You might hear about a newer type of camera called mirrorless. There are also mirrorless digital cameras that exist. They give you the capability of having lenses, but the camera body itself does not need that mirror inside of it. It just goes right into a digital sensor, so it makes the camera much lighter. A lot of times, though, a mirrorless camera will not get you the same quality that a DSLR will. So it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off. If you hear the term point and shoot camera, that is when the camera itself uses that optical viewfinder rather than a mirror, and the image seen through that viewfinder is not the same exact image that is recorded. So a point and shoot is going to be smaller than an SLR camera, and they often get their name because they're made to just pick up the camera and take, like, point where you want it and click the button to shoot. Some point and shoot cameras also will have your extra settings, so I don't necessarily like that definition when you look it up online or from text, because a lot of today's point and shoot cameras have settings and modes and things that you can do to help make the camera do what you want it to do. It's just not as convenient to set things with a lot of different options. So you get a more custom setting situation with an SLR than you might with a point and shoot camera. In a camera, there are a lot of different modes. An SLR camera will have more modes and often different ways to set individual settings within a mode, like how long your exposure is or what you want your ISO to be. Whereas sometimes in a point and shoot camera or even a mirrorless, the mode will set all of those things and you won't have as much control. Macro mode is often what you want to use if you're shooting something very up close. It's the lens used when you see a photograph of a bug that is really high quality and high definition and the bug looks very big. A lot of times that's macro. Action or sports photography will have a really, really fast shutter speed to capture clear images of people or things that are moving. Nighttime photography might have settings that open up the aperture more or have a longer exposure time. You might have a portrait setting, which makes it ideal for having the person or object being in focus, whereas the background is kind of fuzzy. And then landscape is going to help with keeping everything in focus. So if I took a picture of a mountain range in front with a lake in front of it, both the lake, maybe the person standing in the picture, and then the mountain behind it, so your foreground, middle ground, and background will all be in focus with a landscaping mode. White balance is something that you can set in a camera that is digital, and the white balance basically helps you with the color and the way that your whites will appear white, and rather than being yellow or blue. The light source for a photo is often a cue of how to set the white balance. A lot of times there are like fluorescent light settings, or there's a sun setting. If anybody has one of those little Instax Polaroid photo cameras, there's like a little knob on the front that has pictures like of a sun or a house or I think a cloud, and that is basically that camera's white balance setting. So if you have it on the wrong one, you might end up with a picture that's very yellow or a picture that's very blue looking. A lot of digital photographers can modify what the color looks like in their photo afterwards if they have set this incorrectly or if it just doesn't give the photographer what they're looking for in the moment. I know that was a lot of information. This week we're going to have a 10 photo assignment. You can use your cell phone camera to take all of your pictures. You have the whole week to do it. It's due, on Thursday, and then you'll do your reflection on Friday. Basically, you're going to do 3 of your favorite photographs. These can be photos that you've taken in the past, as long as it's something that you took. So if it's a picture that you're in and you're standing there waving and it doesn't look like it's a selfie that you took by like holding a camera up in the air, I'm going to think that someone else took that for you. So you want to make sure that there are 3 pictures that you have taken. Then you're going to do 2 photographs of the same scene or object, or you could literally just take a picture of your living room, but use different focal lengths, or what I mean by that is different amounts of zoom. So if I take my phone and take a picture of my dog, and then I take a picture and zoom in so I can only see like my dog's face versus the whole dog. So one photo where I see the whole dog, and then one photo where I only see her face. That would be an example of part 2. Part 3, you're going to take 2 photos of a person or an animal. If you want to take 2 selfies, I would count that because I know not everybody has people just around. But 2 photos of people or animals, and then 3 photographs of the same object at different times of day. So let's say you have a stuffed animal. Take the stuffed animal outside and get a picture of it like in the morning, maybe when the sun's coming up, or maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then take the same thing out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then maybe take it out in the evening where, maybe your porch light is on, and it's going to look different in those different settings. So there are 10 photos total that you're going to need to have. You can put them in a Google Doc or put them in a Google Slide like I have here, or you can put them in a PowerPoint or Word document, or you can just send me the files via the uploader in like where you submit your assignments. So I'm going to show you examples of mine. So 3 of my favorite photos. I have a picture I took in Paris on the train. There's a train in Paris, I think it's the 5, where you basically come out of like a little tunnel and there's the Eiffel Tower. And so I figured out what time the sun rose and I got this picture. Then a picture of my dog that I really like because she just looked really, really cute and happy. And then I snapped this on my way to work one day. I happened to see this giant hot air balloon and I just thought it was really cool. My 2 photos of people or animals. This is one of my friends. This is me. So like you could do a selfie. I took this on a tripod. So I did actually have a tripod, but that's the Eiffel Tower behind me. And then also I did another dog picture. And then these were some wild horses that came up while I was driving in Germany. They like basically walked over to where my car was and I snapped these pictures. The 2 photos with different focal lengths. This was at Disneyland in California, but it's the Doctor Strange, his eye that he wears. Was it the Eye of Agamotto, I think is what it's called. So I took a picture of it like on its little podium, and then I zoomed in and took a picture of it like from up close. So that's what I mean by focal length or zoom. 3 photos of the same object in different lighting. I used to have this little Mario banana on my windshield. So I took a picture of it just in like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, regular light. I took a picture of it at twilight when the sun was setting, and then I took a picture of it at night when it was dark. So you get the idea. Here's another example. I had like wind chimes on my porch. This is 8:30 in the morning. This is 4:30 p.m. on a rainy day. Now it's 6:30, and I think it was thunderstorming when I took this. And then this is, I don't think I wrote the time there, but this is obviously at night when it's dark out. So you can see the same object. And obviously when I took this night shot, I had to use flash because that wouldn't have shown up at all without a flash. So again, one of these options, you can put them in a Word or PowerPoint document and then attach that into the submission box or email it to me. You can send me a link to your Google Slide or your Google Doc. If you do the Google Slide, Google Doc, make sure that I have permission to view it, because if I can't view it, it doesn't really work. Or you can send them individually. And actually, if you also, I'm going to put a fourth option down here, you can put them all in like a Word document and then print them as a PDF and then attach that PDF into either the submission box or as an email. So if I wanted to do that, basically I would go File, Print. Oh, what I'm talking about. Oh, there it goes. So you can see when I hit File, Print, it gives me this destination. And instead of sending it to my printer, I'm just going to choose the Save as PDF option. And then I would click Save, and this would show up on my computer as a PDF file. And like you can decide where you want it to go. So please let me know whatever works best for you. These are the ways you can submit your photos. And also, if you're doing them individually, please label them so I know, what are your favorites? What are the pictures of the people and the animals? What are the pictures of the focal length? So I have an idea of what photos work with what part. Please reach out if you have any questions, and I will be glad to help.